Hey, heads up! I'll be going over many hidden secrets and details in this video. Please watch until the end to make sure you don't miss a single beat of all the things that you could ever want to know and learn from the latest and greatest Pokemon Legends Arceus showcase. So, the Pokemon Presents showed off way more of Pokemon Legends Arceus than any of us could have ever expected. On top of somehow making me a fan of Pokemon Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl, don't worry, that'll have its own separate video, the Pokemon Presents made me even more excited for Pokemon Legends. So, let's not waste any time here. Here are most, if not all, the things we saw or were implied in the newest trailer. Let's start with the most obvious. The graphics and framerate have been cleaned up. Lighting effects have been added so it's easier to differentiate objects on the screen with this art style. All Pokemon and gameplay we see run smooth as butter with no framerate issues. Draw distances go very far, and we probably won't have to worry about insane pop-in now that billboarding has been implemented for seemingly all assets. Pokemon models have been revamped. Obviously Cyndaquil has flames, but there's a lot more to it than that. Models have more depth to their eyes, and even whole body parts like Rowlet's bowtie leaves, and Cyndaquil and Oshawott mouths having depth instead of just being textures. Some Pokemon have oddball changes, like Wurmple having a yellow spike on its back instead of it being red, or Pokemon having insanely beautiful effects added to them, like Ponyta and Chimchar, whose fire releases embers through particle effects and even leave trails of fire on the terrain as they run across it. Pokemon animations have been added too, which is something they've desperately needed for at least half a decade now. For one, all Pokemon have turning animations to fit their personality. Ponyta does an elegant turn with a confident swing of her head. Pachirisu does turns by hopping around like the energetic squirrel that it is. Buizel does a quick hop to turn so as to not miss what's going on around it. Growlithe jumps to turn astutely as if he's focused on whatever just caught his attention. And Swinub? Well, Swinub doesn't have much to work with. The animations don't just stop at turning though. Pokemon also have more animations to feel included in their environments and add weight to their battles. Pokemon can be found sleeping at night, sitting to chillax, acting surprised when getting hit by a Pokeball, and even lunging at the player. They even reside in areas that match their typing and lore, such as a bog area hosting poison and ground types, and Gyarados residing next to a waterfall, directly matching the lore behind them. Pokemon also seem to have detection now. As we can see here, Lucario follows the Luxray with its head before being completely demolished by its wild charge. Hey, I didn't say they made them completely intelligent.
Completed a survey assignment.
Did Wurmple just react to his friend being captured? Scratch what I said before, they're intelligent now. Pokemon will look around while walking around or standing, such as this scene of Weirdeer. On top of this, they'll also blink. No more dry eyes. Pokemon also seem to do animations while out in the wild, making them seem like they're taking part in some form of activity, even when walking idly. Look at this Growlithe in the background. We know Pokemon already have walking animations, but look! Some Pokemon like Starly can actually take flight straight from walking or running. That's new! Pokemon also seem to have new battle animations. Oshawott now has a signature piece where he jumps up and slices you with his razor shell. Or Magmortar, who actually fires fire out of both of its arms now. They also have idle animations where they growl and try to intimidate each other until you pick a move. Supposedly this was already a thing, but the animations didn't play nearly enough until now. Either way, it seems to happen frequently in Pokemon Legends, so that's great. Gastrodon here is the eastern variant. However, could this rain be caused by the Gastrodon's ability Drizzle? After all, there are no rain clouds in the sky. Nah, who am I kidding? It's probably just subsiding rain, right? Right? So Pokemon can apparently become enraged by some mysterious power, either by a very ticked off Arceus or maybe by some funny business from Giratina. It's more likely Arceus, as they replay the lightning scene when the narrator says,
Pokemon Arceus holds the key to this story.
Either way though, let's dissect these encounters. For one, these Pokemon can attack you during all times of day, as the footage made sure to show us clips of red-eyed Pokemon lunging at us throughout all hours. Their eyes glow red, and their sizes seem to increase, which is still a mechanic I don't like Pokemon insisting on forcing down our throats, no matter what the game, but I suppose here it is a little less intrusive. I imagine enraged Pokemon also have extra strength and health, effectively making them mini-bosses of sorts. You can see a symbol next to their name on their health bar. It seems they act similarly to mini-bosses we can run into in Breath of the Wild. And the lightning strike we see in the trailer may act as a sort of blood moon to ensure another enraged Pokemon periodically takes its place once defeated or caught. As these are mini-bosses, that begs the question of actual bosses. I assume those will be legendary Pokemon, so there's that to look forward to. Either that or other humans who have managed to tame Pokemon and use them for purposes against what our purposes will be. Or both! It's worth noting real quick too, that enraged Pokemon aren't the only Pokemon that will attack you. Aggressive Pokemon breeds will too, as we see in this scene of Luxio attacking us. Going back to the topic of Pokemon sizes, I will say the Pokemon sizes have been scaled better in Legends. Way better than Sword and Shield. Matter of fact, we might actually see unique sizes for same breeds of Pokemon. This is sort of hinted at by watching the Pokemon Legends trailer in the different language variants. For example, the angles and sizes used here in the Korean and Japanese versions differ from the English ones. Either that, or one of these are up to date with the Pokemon sizing, and if so, I do really hope the one portraying large Pokemon as larger are the up-to-date ones. Speaking of unique Pokemon attributes, it seems only Pokemon who can swim or fly can battle in the water. This opens up doors for even more survival strategies, as you'll have to be aware of this whenever trying to traverse certain terrain. I wonder if other Pokemon types can't be used in other terrains, such as grass Pokemon in a volcano. Pokemon aren't the only thing that's been heavily spruced up for Pokemon Legends though. Our player character has seen some spit shining as well. Okay, gross analogy. They've seen hella polish. There, that sounds much better. Our main character does a lot of movements while in battle, doing a plethora of animations while waiting to make a decision in battle, giving their Pokemon commands, losing their balance when their own Pokemon get hit by a powerful blow, and even flailing around a bit when the ground is uneven, I think. What is this, a glitch? This is on top of our player character obviously taking hits from wild Pokemon, dodging hits by our command, aiming and throwing, you name it. I assume there are even more than what we've seen, but this is already a lot of attention to detail, and I for one am very pleased. Our player character looks around while running, and even riding on Pokemon, detecting things in the environment such as other Pokemon. On top of this, they're very expressive from what we've seen so far. We can even customize our character as we see 2 salons in one shot here. We know for sure we'll be able to dress our characters up, as we have a pre-order bonus DLC in the form of a Growlithe outfit. But I assume the other building is either for hair or for customizing our Pokemon in some way. It's weird having 2 salons right next to each other though. I'm not sure what the game design was done this way for. Enough speculation though, let's get back to what we know. Such as how when we're hidden in the tall grass, there's a vignette on the borders of the screen to signal to the player we're still hidden. Very Sekiro, though I appreciate how subtle this effect is in Legends. We also see the borders on the screen change when taking damage, but I have a feeling this is an unfinished version of how this will occur in the final product, seeing as to how it's hardly visible and looks too similar to the vignette we see from hiding in the tall grass. Wait, I thought I said I was done with speculation. Oh well, I guess that's not going anywhere. One of the things I'm most excited for is our ability to have our Pokemon out anytime we want. And not just one Pokemon at a time either. We can have our entire team out at once. This is implied by the trailer showing us a montage of catching Pokemon and then quickly cutting to a scene where those same Mons are sitting all around us. Some people are worried that all they can do is sit, or that this is nothing more than a photo mode. But that seems disproven by the fact I'm about to talk about next. And that is how we can use our Pokemon to interact with assets in the world, such as this scene of Lucario kicking berries out of a tree. I bet we'll also be using them to rid roadblocks and solve environmental puzzles of sorts. We can see the berries in the trees. That's nice. Speaking of interacting with the environment though, it seems we don't have to worry about invisible walls on cliffsides anymore, as we see a shot of the player character literally dive rolling straight off a cliff, and they do a cool little tuck into a flipping position as they fall off. This also means we can take fall damage, but even more importantly, this is the scene that signals to the audience that we can, indeed, use Pokemon to traverse the world in super fun ways. This first option we're shown has Braviary picking us up right out of the sky, seemingly activated in a similarly seamless manner to the paraglider from Breath of the Wild. Wow, that was a tongue twister. It seems we can not only glide and dive down to go faster, but some scenes show us flying upwards, with sparkles coming out from Braviary. How exciting! We can also surf on a Basculegion. This doesn't limit us, however. Actually, it makes us even more free than we are on land. Not only can we surf fast, but we can jump. Oh, that doesn't sound cool enough to you? Well, if you may have noticed in this shot, it looks like we can also use Basculegion's ghostly powers to perform a double jump. I'm not sure if this is by the player's input though, actually. It might just be to avoid landing on the ground while on top of him, since that would be a little awkward to land on top of the Basculegion. But either way, something seems to be happening here that we're jumping again in midair. We can also jump while riding on Weirdeer. But once again, the same question comes up. What happens if we jump into the water? Or off a cliff? Maybe our Pokemon retreats directly into their Pokeball and we as the human take the consequences? Guess we'll have to see. Now, even when we're mounted on Pokemon, this doesn't mean we're invincible. Pokemon still roam the overworld around us, and we see in this scene of us riding on Weirdeer, they will attack you like these Golduck are doing with some water type attacks as we jump away. All this talk about these mounted Pokemon, it's easy to forget there was actually another one from the leaked screenshots. Mysteriously missing from all this footage is the Pokemon that we can scale mountains on. I have a feeling this is a late game find, so we probably won't see it revealed for a while, if we see it revealed before the game releases at all. That being said, is there really only one Pokemon species we can mount for each one of these actions? I do wonder. The trailer never mentioned anything by word about the mounting system. It was all just visuals. Perhaps we can mount several breeds for these activities, and all the adults can finally fulfill their childhood dreams of riding on top of a Rapidash. Speaking of dreams, it's time to shatter some. This game might not be as open world as we thought. The way the trailer explains things, we unlock new areas to survey, and visually, the trailer shows us selecting a region on the map. Presumably we warp here with an Abra, which we can see in this shot here, and simply start at our base camp for the region where we will build a strategic loadout to survive surveying the sandboxes we're given. Personally, I don't mind this much. It's similar to 3D Mario games, but it is a bit of a letdown by comparison to a fully open world like Breath of the Wild. Then again, as we unlock new areas, they might open up to be accessible seamlessly from other areas. We'll just have to wait and see. While we're on the topic, let's take a look at the map. It seems it's marked with 6 different regions, as we can see these little flags in different parts of the map. Some of these regions host several types of biomes, so even if they are given to us as sandboxes, then we can look forward to a variety and surprises. I also thought at first we were seeing other settlements throughout the land, but unfortunately they were just artworks of tents and characters next to them, and I completely misconstrued it in my last analysis. There is one structure we can clearly see on the map though. Snowpoint Temple, which houses Regigigas in Diamond and Pearl. I wonder if we can enter it. My money says we can. We also get to see the 3 lakes, not only on the map, but also in gameplay. On the map, we can see them in the lower left, the middle right, and at the top left right next to Snowpoint. In the game footage, here they all are again. Lake Valor's actually missing, but we'll know when we see it because it apparently has a very dense fog around it. Don't think I forgot about the secret 4th lake and Turnback Cave though. I have a feeling we can find it in Legends. Why do I say that? Well, let's look at this clip here where we're fighting a Probopass. If you look in the background, you can see the entrance to a cave. You might be skeptical that this leads anywhere until you realize that if we zoom in, you can see there's a nose pass roaming the interior. If this isn't proof enough, let's look at this scene with Chimchar running away from us. In the background, we can see a bridge leading right up to the mountain. The only explanation for this is that there's a cave there. Otherwise, we'd be walking across the bridge right to a dead end, and that seems kind of pointless. We can even see several cave entrances on the map, littered on Mount Coronet too. It seems like we'll be exploring the interior quite a bit, and that it will most likely be pretty maze-like. The big point though, is that with caves being a part of Legends, I do believe we will also be able to find the 4th lake, where Turnback Cave was located in this time. I'm also very curious about this icy structure we see in many shots, as it's just elevated in the middle of a flat, snowy valley. I guess we can only get there by gliding? Anyways, let's quickly talk about our base village. It's been revealed to be Jubilife, which I mentioned in my initial map breakdown was a supremely likely choice given all we knew. It's much bigger than we thought though. Seriously, this looks like the Hidden Leaf Village from Naruto. The Galaxy building even looks like the Hokage's mansion. This comparison makes a lot of sense when you think about how both the worlds of Naruto and Pokemon can't possibly align with real-world history and technology given the times because of the magical kinds of powers they have access to, such as, in this case, electric-type Pokemon. History in mind, this seems to be some sort of industrial revolution because we can see steam coming from the Galaxy building. Not only that, but Galarian Weezing, whose design was greatly inspired by Industrial Revolution attire, can be seen on the building. This does beg the question though, in the Pokemon world, was it Galarian Weezing who inspired the Industrial Revolution, or did that form evolve from the Industrial Revolution itself? Who knows? I doubt we'll ever find out. We can also see Jade Magikarp on the roofing of the building. This is obviously inspired by real-life Asian architecture that has fish on the corners of the roofs. This jade coloring is also reminiscent of the jade statues we see in the Diamond and Pearl remakes. Nice connection there. Inside the building, we can actually see the blueprints for it in this shot. Now we know exactly what the interior looks like. Thanks, Pokemon Company! I'm just gonna say with no explanation needed, Silene is an ancestor to Cyrus. Commander Komodo is an ancestor to Professor Rowan, and Professor Laventon, I'm guessing Professor Oak? But hey, maybe he's just an outlier. I've mentioned before how it's odd that the front gate to the village had nothing on the right side, while the left had a bell. Well, now we can see something in the right tower. However, I have no idea what this is. A plant? We can also see in this shot that sometimes the ladders are taken down, and we can't climb up the towers. Perhaps this will change dynamically throughout the game, or maybe even through different times of the day? Now's as good a time as any to talk about the water in Pokemon Legends. Really, there was no good place for this topic to fit, so I'm just squeezing it in here. But the water is finally translucent! This is easily the best looking water in a mainline Pokemon game to date, with Pokemon Let's Go really being the only competition. We can also see what seems to be screen space reflections in the water. This is an expensive effect with massive payoff and savings on file size. It's about time we see the Pokemon Company using their insanely massive budget for something worthwhile. Okay, I talked about the water. Now let's dive into Pokemon battles. They're marked by a quick transition of the wild Pokemon roaring as the camera zooms in on them. This is initiated by throwing our Pokemon out to the field. We know by the reticle if we're throwing a ball to use our Pokemon or if we're using a ball to catch a wild Pokemon. Balls for catching show an all-white reticle when aimed. Balls for throwing our Pokemon out are marked by a red and white reticle, resembling the shape and coloring of a Pokeball. I have a feeling this will be even more on the nose in the final release of the game. We can use the X button to switch between presenting balls for catching and balls for throwing out our Pokemon from our team. We can also rotate through our list of Pokeballs or Pokemon on the fly, probably with the L and R buttons, maybe with the D-pad left and right. Aiming is probably done with ZL. Wild's Pokemon life gauges have been moved to be right above their heads since the last trailer. What's really great though is how all the battle menus have been made translucent. This is something I've said Pokemon can benefit from for a long time, as it works to not take us out of what's happening. While in battles, we can select agile or strong versions of moves with the L and R buttons while hovering over said move. These options affect the turn order, which can be seen on the right. Turn orders are affected by a Pokemon's base speed stat, as well as innate move speeds, and which version of the attacks we choose, being an agile or strong version. We can see how each option directly affects the turn order when we look on the right while selecting. Conversely, we can turn the turn order guide off with the Y button. This will most likely make battles feel more freeform. There's also a magnifying glass icon with the plus button. There are several theories for what this could do. One theory is it toggles the super effective icons on moves, which can be seen here. A dot signals normal effect, while a hazard triangle signals not very effective. We can also see at the bottom left next to our Pokemon's name and health what buffs or debuffs they have. Super convenient touch. Another theory is that the plus button toggles some sort of camera control, whether it be a zoom function or allowing for complete camera movement on the scene taking place just to admire the Pokemon facing off. I'm hoping it's there for camera control, but it's more likely there for some sort of menu visibility toggle. Not much more can be said for battles, except these changes are all super exciting. But now we can talk about another exciting aspect: crafting. That's right, we can now craft in a mainline Pokemon game. Gathering materials in several ways, such as having our Pokemon kick berry trees, or even gaining items when catching or defeating wild Pokemon, as we see in this shot here. This also confirms we'll be seeing spoiled items in the game, by the way. Sorry if you're like me and find that sort of mechanic pointlessly inconvenient. What isn't pointless though is the preferred foods tab. Perhaps we'll be seeing Pokemon eating food out in the wild, similarly to new Pokemon Snap. Or maybe we'll be feeding them ourselves. How fun! We can craft different kinds of Pokeballs. And I was right in one of my analyses where I said we'd most likely make them from apricorns. Move out the way, Kurt! We were here first! One of the Pokeballs we see we can craft is a heavy ball. I like the way its trade-offs work in this game. According to its description, it's heavier, so we have to get closer to a Pokemon to throw it at him. But it also has a higher catch rate. That's awesome! I'm glad it'll have a direct effect on how we play the game. Conversely, we can buy some supplies at base camps, and presumably a market of some sort in Jubilife. Looking at our menu options that appear during traversal on the left side of the screen, the minus button grants us access to what does indeed look like a phone. I'm sorry, but yes, that is absolutely 100% a phone. Maybe powered by a Rotom? First of its kind? I don't know. Just remember that the Pokemon world will always have been ahead of us in technology. This phone might be used to call mountable Pokemon, but its exact use is definitely not made apparent at all. We'll have to wait and see what its true purpose is. Pressing up on the D-pad seems to bring up the items and crafting menu we saw earlier, and pressing down on the D-pad brings up our Pokedex, as its icon directly matches the scene of the Pokedex we see later. Also, it's pretty cute how it's hinted that we draw on the Pokedex with an ink brush. I hope they make that art style more apparent in the Pokedex for the finished game release, because this derpy 3D model they show in the trailer ain't doing it for me. Pokemon Legends seems to have been inspired a lot by new Pokemon Snap, with a lot of its elements, but none scream the inspiration more than the Pokedex ranking system, which needs research points to rank it up. Criteria to complete for each individual Pokemon includes, but is not limited to, number caught, number defeated, number you've defeated with super effective type moves, times you've seen it use any number of moves it can learn, number of forms you've seen, and number you've evolved. Some Pokemon will have more or less of these criteria to fill out. Research levels, at least for Shinx, cap at level 10. You'll also notice the Pokedex description really does describe their behavior, as here we see Shinx's description be about how one can go about taming it. Pokemon forms seem to include gender differences, as Shinx is shown to have at least 2, and we can see the symbol for its gender right next to this. We can see the number statistic of how one breed of Pokemon can vary by weight and size, but I wonder if we will see that visually through the models. After all, we see different sizes for Pokemon in the different versions of the Pokemon Presents. Ranks for the Survey Corps are labeled by stars and given to us by the Galaxy Expedition team based on how much we level up our Pokedex. Once we reach the next rank, we unlock more areas to explore. Biomes we've seen in trailers so far include fields, cliff sides, meadows, forests, beaches, ruins, snowfields, volcanoes, marshlands, and bogs. Harsh environments was right. Now let's go over some obscure things from the trailer real quick. For one, the geyser from the original footage is nowhere to be seen. I thought it was in this giant panning shot, but it looks like it might just be a rock over here that I'm looking at. We still have no explanation for what that geyser was, and maybe we never will. Something we do see a lot of though are wrecked ships. I'm super curious what the story is behind these, as some of them are upside down. Our best view of them is in this scene with the Chatot flying around. This probably has something to do with how we came to this region. But yeah, the trailer ends with what looks to be a cutscene as we approach that tree of life that I've talked about several times. I think this is implying our next trailer we're gonna get for Pokemon Legends will be a story trailer. But maybe that's just the editor and me talking. Oh, and trading is confirmed.